The millionaire, with his perfectly structured life, never imagined that a simple observation from a street girl would change everything. After she warns him about a mysterious gardener, he decides to cancel his trip and investigate his home. The truth about his wife and her criminal actions begins to surface, and he finds himself caught in a storm of betrayal and deceit. If this beautiful story of resilience and love interested you, Chapter 1. The morning in New York City awoke with that characteristic hum of the city that never sleeps. The still timid sun crept between the skyscrapers of Park Avenue, while traffic already began to thicken on the streets of the metropolis's most coveted neighborhood. There, atop one of the hills that embraced the Upper East Side, stood a mansion that seemed to have been lifted from the pages of an international architecture magazine. Wrought iron gates, impeccably manicured gardens, a fountain spouting crystal-clear water in the center of the front courtyard. Everything breathed luxury, power, and an almost obsessive order. Inside that fortress of concrete, marble, and glass, Michael Anderson Ford was preparing for another day that promised to be decisive in his career. At 40, he had built an empire that began with a small brokerage firm and now spread across investments in technology, agribusiness, and real estate. His businesses crossed oceans, and his name was spoken with respect in the most exclusive circles of American and international business. Michael looked at himself in the walk-in closet mirror, adjusting the Italian tie that perfectly matched his bespoke navy blue suit, his dark hair already showing a few silver strands. At the temples was impeccably styled. The angular face, the well-trimmed beard, the brown eyes that conveyed determination. He knew that appearance was a fundamental part of the game he played every day. In the business world, the first impression often defined the outcome of multi-million-dollar deals. On that Wednesday morning, Michael had a clear objective. At 11 o'clock, he would fly to Miami, where he would meet with American investors interested in expanding their operations into Latin America. It was an opportunity that had been in the works for months, and the contract he carried in his leather briefcase could represent a gigantic leap in his net worth. More money, more power, more recognition. That was how he measured success, and up to that moment, his life seemed to be the perfect realization of all his plans. He descended the marble staircase that led to the entrance hall, his footsteps echoing in the still sleepy silence of the house. The decor was sophisticated, almost cold in its perfection. Paintings by renowned artists on the walls, imported crystal chandeliers, furniture that combined contemporary design with classic pieces, everything chosen with care, everything in its right place. Veronica, his wife, had a special talent for creating impressive environments. She herself used to say that the house was the calling card of a successful couple. Veronica. Michael thought of her as he headed to the kitchen for breakfast. She was still asleep in their bedroom, as she always was when he had early morning trips. A 35-year-old woman, blonde, elegant, always impeccable in her designer clothes and discreet but expensive jewelry. They had met 7 years ago at a charity event at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. She was working as a public relations manager for a cosmetics company, and he was captivated by her beauty, her intelligence, and the ease with which she moved between different social circles. 6 months later, they were married in a ceremony that made headlines in the society columns. In the kitchen, the housekeeper, Mrs. Martha, had already prepared everything. Fresh coffee, warm French bread, assorted cold cuts, sliced fruit. The 60-year-old woman had been working for Michael for over a decade, since before the marriage. She was one of the few constant presences in his life, and he trusted her as if she were family. "Good morning, Mr. Ford," she said, with her accent from upstate New York. "Everything is ready. The driver called to say he'll be here in half an hour." "Excellent, Martha. Thank you," he replied, pouring himself coffee into one of the porcelain cups. "How many days will you be away this time?" 3, 4 at most. It depends on how the negotiations go." Mrs. Martha nodded, returning to her tasks. Michael ate quickly, checking emails on his phone while he chewed. Always moving, always connected, always one step ahead. That was his philosophy of life. His father, a modest merchant from a small town upstate, used to say that those who stand still get run over. Michael took that lesson to the extreme. At 7:40 he picked up his executive briefcase and the small travel bag that had been ready since the night before. Veronica had offered to pack it for him, as she always did. She said she liked taking care of those details, that it was a way of showing affection. Michael gladly accepted. After all, she was a devoted wife, always attentive to his commitments, always available when he needed support at social events or business dinners. He walked out the main door, feeling the cool morning breeze of New York. The sky was clear, promising a sunny day. The driver hadn't arrived yet, so Michael decided to walk to the gate, taking the opportunity to check if the gardener had indeed trimmed the rose bushes as he had requested the previous week. He was a man of details, and he expected everything on his property to be perfect at all times. That's when he saw her. The girl. She was leaning against the wall that separated the property from the sidewalk, exactly at the spot where she always appeared. Michael had noticed her before on other mornings, always there, quiet, watching the street's activity. She must have been about 11 or 12, thin, with shabby clothes that had seen better days. Her brown hair was disheveled, and she held a small plastic bag where she likely kept her belongings. Michael had never been insensitive to poverty. He had grown up in a simple family and knew what it was like to struggle. That's why, whenever he saw the girl, he would leave a few coins or a dollar bill in her hand. It wasn't much, he knew, but he believed that small gesture could make a difference in her day. Maybe she would buy some bread, a juice, something to alleviate her hunger. "Good morning," he said, approaching. The girl looked up, and Michael noticed her eyes were a light brown, almost honey-colored, very expressive. "Good morning, mister," she replied in a soft voice, almost a whisper. Michael took his wallet from his pocket and pulled out a $10 bill. "Here, buy something to eat," he said, holding out the money. The girl took the bill, but didn't run off as she usually did. She stood there looking at him with an intensity that made him slightly uncomfortable. There was something different that morning, something in the way she was staring at him. "Are you traveling today, mister?" she asked suddenly. Michael frowned. "I am. How do you know?" "Whenever you leave with a suitcase, you're gone for a few days, and then the lady calls the gardener." The comment was so unexpected that it took Michael a few seconds to process it. "What gardener?" he asked, confused. "We have a gardener who comes twice a week, but he was just here yesterday." The girl bit her lower lip as if deciding whether or not to continue. She glanced around, checking if anyone was nearby, and then said in an even lower voice, "Not that gardener, mister. Another one. He always comes when you travel. Early this morning, I saw him talking to the lady at the back gate." Michael felt a chill run down his spine. "At the back gate? What back gate?" The property had only two entrances, the main gate, which he used, and a service gate that opened onto a side street, used only by staff and for deliveries. Veronica had no reason to be at that gate, much less talking to some unknown gardener. "Are you sure about what you're saying?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm but feeling the tension build in his chest. "I'm sure, mister. I sleep over in that little park," she said, pointing to a small wooded area about 50 yards away. "I can see everything from there. Whenever you travel, on the day you leave, that gardener shows up. He brings big boxes, stays for a few hours, and then leaves. The lady always opens the gate for him." "And why have you never told me this before?" The girl shrugged. "I thought you knew. But today, when I saw the lady talking to him again, and he said he was going to bring special tools, I thought it was strange. Does a gardener need special tools?" Michael's heart began to race. Special tools. What could that mean? His rational mind tried to find logical explanations. Maybe Veronica had hired someone for a new landscaping project. Maybe it was a surprise for him. But why do it secretly? And why always when he was traveling? "What time did you see them talking?" he asked. "Around 6 in the morning. I was just waking up when I heard their voices. The man said he'd be back later, around 10, when he was sure you were gone." Michael glanced at his watch. It was almost 8. He had to be at the airport by 10 for his 11 o'clock flight. If what the girl was saying was true, and if this so-called gardener really showed up at 10, he would already be on his way to the airport, with no chance of finding out what was happening. A voice inside him, the same voice that warned him in risky business deals, that instinct that had been with him since childhood, began to scream. Something was wrong, very wrong. "What does this man look like?" he asked, crouching down to be at the girl's eye level. "Tall, dark-haired, strong. He wears a cap and sunglasses. He has an old white pickup truck. One time I saw him take off his cap and he has really short hair, almost shaved." Michael swallowed hard. He didn't know anyone matching that description, and Veronica, in 7 years of marriage, had never mentioned hiring extra gardeners or doing projects in the garden without consulting him. They always decided those things together. Always. "You're a very observant girl," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "What's your name?" "Isabella, mister." "Isabella, I need you to do a very important favor for me. Can you stay around here this morning, watching? If you see that man arriving, I want you to come and tell me immediately. Can you do that?" The girl nodded vigorously. "I can, mister." Michael took a few more bills from his wallet and gave them to her. "This is for you to eat well today. And this," he said, scribbling his cell number on a piece of paper, "is my phone number. If you see anything strange, call me. You can call collect, okay?" Isabella took the paper and the money carefully, as if they were precious treasures. "Okay, mister. You can count on me." At that moment, Michael's car turned the corner. The driver, George, a 50-year-old man who had worked for him for 3 years, parked in front of the gate and got out to take the luggage. "Good morning, Mr. Ford. All set for the trip?" Michael looked at the car, then at Isabella, then at the mansion behind him. His mind was working. At high speed, weighing options, calculating risks, trying to decide what to do. The meeting in Miami was crucial. He had invested months in those negotiations. Canceling now could cost him millions. But what if the girl was right? What if there was really something happening in his house behind his back? His instinct spoke louder. "George, change of plans," he said, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. "I'm not traveling today." "What do you mean, sir?" "But the meeting." "I'll reschedule it. Call my assistant and ask him to inform the Americans that I had an unforeseen issue. Offer a video conference for this afternoon if they accept. If not, have them reschedule for next week." George was visibly confused, but he knew Michael well enough not to question him. "Yes, sir. And what would you like me to do?" "Go back home. Take the day off. I'll be staying here." "Are you sure, sir?" "Absolutely." The driver took the suitcase back and put it in the trunk, still looking bewildered. Michael waved to him and watched the car drive away. When he looked to the side, Isabella was still there, watching everything with those attentive eyes. "Remember, let me know if you see anything," he said, and the girl nodded before moving away toward the small park. Michael stood there for a moment, alone at the gate of his own home, feeling a strange mix of anxiety and determination. He had built an empire by being cautious, trusting his instincts, never ignoring the signs when something seemed out of place. And now, all his senses were screaming that something was deeply wrong, happening under the roof of his own house. He entered through the main door, closing it carefully so as not to make a sound. The house was silent. Mrs. Martha must have been in the laundry room at the back, and Veronica was surely still asleep. Or was she? Did she know he had changed his plans? Was she waiting for him to leave, to start whatever it was she was going to do with the mysterious gardener? Michael climbed the stairs, treading lightly to avoid making the steps creak. He reached their bedroom and opened the door slowly. Veronica was there, lying down, her blonde hair spread across the pillow, breathing softly. She looked like an angelic figure, so serene, so beautiful. How was it possible that this woman was involved in something suspicious? Maybe he was being paranoid. Maybe the girl had gotten things mixed up, seen something that wasn't quite what it seemed. But then he remembered Isabella's eyes, that childish but solid certainty, the wealth of details she had provided. A child wouldn't invent such an elaborate story. And more importantly, why would she? He closed the door with the same care and returned to the hallway. He needed a plan. He couldn't just confront Veronica based on the account of a street girl. He needed proof, concrete evidence. He needed to see with his own eyes what was happening. He went to his office, a room on the second floor where he spent hours managing his business. He turned on the computer and started thinking. The security cameras. The house had a monitoring system with cameras at various external points. Had they captured anything? He accessed the system and began reviewing the recordings from the past few days. There it was. He found it. 3 days ago, when he had been in Washington, D.C. for a meeting with the government, at 10:15 in the morning, a white pickup truck parked at the service gate. A man got out, exactly as Isabella had described, tall, dark-haired, cap, sunglasses. Veronica appeared and opened the gate. They talked for a few minutes, and then the man took boxes from the truck and carried them inside the property. The camera didn't reach the interior of the service area, but Michael saw when, 3 hours later, the man left, without the boxes. He went back a week earlier, to the time Michael had been in Chicago. Same scene, same routine. Pickup truck boxes, a stay of a few hours, leaving without the boxes. Michael's blood ran cold. How many times had this happened? He went further back in the history. 2 weeks before, a month, 2 months. Every time he traveled, without exception, that man appeared. Always at the same time, always with the same boxes, always received by Veronica. What was in those boxes? What was this man doing in his house? And more importantly, what was Veronica hiding from him? Michael leaned back in his chair, feeling the weight of the discovery. 7 years of marriage, 7 years of believing he knew his wife, that he trusted her completely. And now he was discovering that whenever he was away, she was conducting some kind of parallel operation that he never even suspected existed. The questions multiplied in his mind. Was it an extramarital affair? Was the man a lover disguised as a gardener? But then why the boxes? And why the mechanical regularity always on his travel days? No, he thought. This isn't an affair. This is something more calculated, colder. This is something planned. He looked at the clock again. 9:20. If Isabella was right, the man would arrive in 40 minutes. Michael needed to decide what to do. Confront them? Call the police? Continue investigating on his own? He took a deep breath, trying to calm the adrenaline rushing through his veins. He was a successful businessman because he knew how to stay calm under pressure, because he analyzed complex situations and made strategic decisions. He needed to apply the same logic now. He decided to watch, to hide and observe what would happen when the man arrived, to see with his own eyes what they did, where they took the boxes, what kind of interaction they had. Only then could he understand the extent of what was happening and make the right decision about what to do next. He went downstairs silently and headed to the service area. There was a storage closet there, where cleaning and maintenance equipment was kept. From there, he could watch the service gate without being seen. He entered the closet, leaving the door ajar just enough to have a view of what would happen. And he waited. The minutes dragged on with torturous slowness. Michael felt his heart pounding, the anxiety growing with each passing second. At 9:50 he heard footsteps. Veronica came down the stairs, already dressed, made up, elegant as always. She went straight to the service gate and stood there looking at her watch. 10 o'clock sharp. The sound of an approaching engine. The white pickup truck stopped on the other side of the gate. The man got out, and Veronica opened it immediately. They didn't greet each other with kisses or hugs, just a nod, professional, cold. "Did you bring everything?" Veronica asked. "Everything," the man replied in a deep voice. "But I'll need more time today. The equipment is more complex." "How much time?" "About 4 hours, maybe 5. "No problem. He's not back until Friday." Michael felt a pang of anger. She was so sure of his schedule, so confident that he would be away. And what was this more complex equipment? The man went back to the truck and started unloading boxes. They weren't ordinary boxes. They were professional cases, the kind used to transport sensitive electronic equipment. There were at least 6 of them, all with security locks. Veronica helped carry them, and together they brought everything into the house, passing through the service area towards one of the rooms Michael rarely frequented, a sort of storage room in the basement, where they kept things they didn't use regularly. Michael needed to see more. He needed to know what was in those cases. He waited until they disappeared down the stairs, and then slipped out of his hiding place, moving quickly but carefully. He went down the stairs leading to the basement, hugging the wall, listening to their voices echoing down the corridor. Everything's connected, the man was saying. The microphones are in the places you indicated. The cameras, too. I'll need to test the transmission range. Microphones, cameras, transmission. Michael felt his blood boil. They were bugging his house. His own wife was installing surveillance devices on his property. Excellent, Veronica replied. We need to make sure that when he gets back we can monitor everything. Conversations, meetings, everything he does in the office. Computer passwords, account codes, everything. Her voice was cold, calculating, completely different from the sweet, affectionate tone she always used with him. Michael felt as if he were listening to a stranger, not the woman he had shared a bed with for 7 years. And the documents, the man asked? I've already gained access to almost everything. All that's left are the offshore accounts, but with the system you're installing, I'll be able to get the passwords when he logs in. Are you sure he doesn't suspect anything? Veronica laughed, a bitter laugh that cut Michael like a blade. He's so predictable. Works so much, travels so much, he doesn't even notice what's happening right under his own nose. He believes everything I say, it's almost too easy. Michael felt his legs weaken. The woman he loved, whom he trusted, whom he had sworn to protect and honor, was planning to rob him, to betray him in the most vile way possible. And worse, she considered him a fool, predictable, easy to manipulate. The anger gave way to an icy clarity. He needed to act, but he needed to be smart. Confronting them now would be impulsive. He needed more solid proof. He needed to understand the full extent of their plan. He needed to ensure that when he acted, it would be definitive and legal. He went back up the stairs silently, returned to his office, and locked the door. He picked up his phone and called Robert Taylor, his personal lawyer and longtime friend. Robert, I need you at my house now. It's urgent. What's wrong, Michael? I can't talk over the phone. Get here as fast as you can. And bring someone who specializes in financial crimes and invasion of privacy. Crimes? Michael, what's going on? I'm being robbed. By my own wife. There was a silence on the other end of the line. I'll be there in half an hour. Michael hung up and stared out the office window. Down below, in the small park, he could see Isabella sitting on a bench, eating something she had probably bought with the money he had given her. That girl, a stranger, a child he barely knew, had been more loyal to him in a single morning than his wife had been in 7 years of marriage. And he knew, with a certainty that ached in his chest, that his life would never be the same again. Chapter 2. Robert Taylor arrived in 25 minutes, bringing with him a serious-looking woman, perhaps in her mid-40s with discreetly framed glasses and an executive briefcase under her arm. Michael met them at the back door, away from the security cameras that he now saw with different eyes, and also far from any possibility of Veronica or the so-called gardener noticing them. This is Dr. Helen Miller, an expert in digital crimes and asset fraud, Robert introduced in a low voice. You can trust her completely. Helen extended her hand firmly. Mr. Ford, Mr. Taylor gave me a summary on the way. We'll need to document everything you've discovered. Michael led them to a rarely used room on the first floor, far from the basement where Veronica and the man were still working. He could hear muffled sounds coming from downstairs, indistinct voices, movement. They were still installing the espionage equipment, oblivious to the fact that the very target of their plans was just a few feet away, preparing his counteroffensive. They sat around a meeting table. Michael took a deep breath before he began. I need you to understand that until this morning, I had a completely different life. I trusted my wife blindly. Never in 7 years did I suspect a thing. What changed? Asked Helen, already taking a laptop out of her briefcase. A street girl warned me. Michael realized how strange, almost absurd that sounded. A child I occasionally helped told me that whenever I traveled, a man showed up here, a supposed gardener. I decided to investigate. And what did you find? Michael opened the laptop he had brought with him and showed them the security camera footage. Robert and Helen watched in silence, their faces growing grim with each repeated scene. The white pickup truck, the man in the cap, Veronica opening the gate, boxes being carried in, once, twice, 3, 5, 8 times. Every trip Michael had taken in the last 3 months, corresponded to a visit from that man. "This is systematic," Helen murmured. "It's not an isolated incident, it's a planned operation." "There's more," Michael said, and he told them what he had overheard in the basement. Veronica's words echoed in his mind like daggers. Microphones, cameras, passwords, offshore accounts. "She's installing surveillance equipment in my own home. She wants access to everything I have." Robert ran a hand over his face, visibly shocked. "Michael, this is extremely serious. We're talking about invasion of privacy, conspiracy to commit fraud, possibly racketeering. You need to call the police right now." "No," Michael said firmly. "Not yet." "What do you mean, not yet? She's committing crimes in your house at this very moment." "I know, but if I call the police now, they'll arrest her and her accomplice. Then what? They'll claim they haven't done anything yet, that they were just installing equipment. A good lawyer could turn this into something minor. I want more. I want to understand the full extent of her plan. I want to know who else is involved. And most importantly, I want irrefutable proof that she was planning to rob me." Helen looked at Michael with an expression that mixed respect and concern. "You want to let them continue?" "Exactly. I want them to finish installing the equipment. I want them to think everything is going according to plan. And in the meantime, I'm going to investigate everything about my wife. I want to know who she really is." "This is dangerous, Michael," Robert warned. "If she finds out you know, she could accelerate the heist. She could destroy evidence." "She won't find out. I'm good at pretending, my friend. I've spent years negotiating with corporate sharks. I know how to keep a poker face." Michael felt an icy determination settle in his chest. "You're going to help me find out everything about Veronica, her past, family, previous relationships, and you," looking at Helen, "are going to help me map out exactly what she's doing with my assets." Helen nodded. "I'll need access to your systems, accounts, passwords, everything. You'll have it, but you need to be discreet. Nothing can alert her." Robert stood up and began pacing the room. "Michael, I understand your anger, but think carefully. How long do you plan to keep up this charade? Days? Weeks?" "As long as it takes to build a solid case against her." Michael looked out the window, seeing the vastness of his property, everything he had built with so much effort. "Robert, for years I built my empire by being patient, strategic. I'm not going to throw it all away now on impulse. I want that when she falls, there's no way for her to get back up." "All right," Robert finally agreed, "but on one condition. I'm putting a private investigator on you and her 24/7. I need to know you're safe." "Accepted." Helen was typing rapidly on her notebook. "I'll start a full audit of your finances. If she's already moved any money, we'll find out. I'll also track the so-called gardener, license plates, documents, everything. No one operates like this without leaving a digital trail." "Excellent." Michael glanced at the clock. "They should be finishing up soon. I need you to leave before she comes upstairs. We can't raise any suspicion." "How are you going to explain that you didn't travel?" Robert asked. "I'll say the meeting was cancelled at the last minute. Problems with the American investors. It happens all the time in business. She'll believe it." After Robert and Helen left through the back door, Michael returned to his office. He needed to appear natural, as if he had really spent the day working from home. He turned on his computer, opened spreadsheets, made a few calls to business contacts, creating a normal routine. But his mind was elsewhere, processing everything he had discovered in the last few hours. Who was Veronica really? The woman who slept beside him, who kissed him every morning, who organized perfect dinners for his partners, who seemed so dedicated to their marriage. How had she hidden this other side so well? How many lies had she told? How long had she been planning this? At 2 in the afternoon, he heard movement downstairs. Voices, footsteps, the service door opening. He peeked discreetly through the window and saw the man carrying the empty cases back to the pickup truck. Veronica stood beside him, checking something on a tablet. "Everything operational?" she was asking. "Perfect. The mics are active, the cameras too. You'll receive everything on your phone and laptop. Full angles of the office, the meeting room, the bedroom." The bedroom. Michael felt nauseous. She was even spying on their intimacy. "And the keyloggers," Veronica continued. "Installed on all the computers. Every key he types, every password he uses, you'll have access to it. Excellent. How long until we have everything? Depends on how often he accesses the accounts. But I'd say in 2 weeks you'll have everything you need. Then it's just a matter of executing the transfer and disappearing. Disappearing. The word echoed in Michael's mind. She planned not just to rob him, but to vanish afterward. To leave him with nothing, no explanations, likely in a devastating financial situation. I'll transfer the rest of your payment by tomorrow, Veronica said. Great. If you need me for anything else, just call. But be careful with the calls. Only use the burner phone I gave you. Don't worry, I'm not an amateur. The man got into the pickup truck and drove off. Veronica stood there for a moment, looking at the house, an expression of satisfaction on her face. Then she went inside, and Michael heard her coming up the stairs, a knock on the office door. Michael took a deep breath, adjusted his posture, and put on the mask he would need to wear from now on. "Come in," he said, keeping his voice normal. Veronica opened the door, and there she was, beautiful as ever, a sweet smile on her lips. "Darling, I didn't know you were home. I thought you had traveled." "The meeting was cancelled," Michael explained, forcing a smile. "Problems with the investors' documentation. They're going to reschedule for next week." "What a shame," she said, approaching. "You were so excited about this deal." "It's part of the game." Michael stood up and kissed her on the cheek, fighting the urge to pull away. "How was your day?" "Normal. I did Pilates, went to the salon, took care of a few things around the house." The lie came so easily from her lips, so naturally. "And yours?" "Work, as always. I took the opportunity to get ahead on some reports." Veronica ran, her fingers through his hair, a gesture she often made that now seemed repugnant to Michael. "How about we go out for dinner tonight? We could go to that Japanese restaurant you love." "Good idea," he agreed, maintaining the act. 8 o'clock? "Perfect. I'll go get ready." She left the office, and Michael could only breathe normally again when he heard the bedroom door close. He picked up his phone and sent a message to Robert. "They've installed the equipment. She plans to execute the heist in 2 weeks. I need the results of the investigation as soon as possible." The reply came almost immediately. "Helen is already on it. We'll have something by tomorrow. The private investigator starts tonight." Excellent. The next few hours were torture. Michael changed, put on a casual suit, and prepared for dinner as if it were a normal night. In the car, on the way to the restaurant, Veronica chatted about trivial things, plans to redecorate the living room, a trip she wanted to take to Europe next month. Every word was a farce, every smile a lie. At Nobu, one of New York's most exclusive restaurants, they sat at a reserved table. The Apu maitre d' knew them well, always treating them with special deference. Veronica ordered champagne, toasted to their future. Michael raised his glass, looking at the woman he thought he knew, and saw only a stranger. "Darling, can I ask you a question?" Veronica said suddenly, catching Michael off guard. "Of course." "Have you ever thought about what our life would be like if you decided to retire? Like sell everything and live off the income somewhere idyllic?" The question was casual, but Michael sensed the intention behind it. She was testing, probing, trying to understand how willing he was to liquidate his assets. "Why do you ask?" "I don't know. Sometimes I think we work so hard, run around so much, and for what? We don't have children, no close family. We could just enjoy what you've built." "It's an interesting idea," Michael said, choosing his words carefully. "But I don't see myself stopping now. I still have too many projects." Veronica shrugged, but Michael saw a flash of frustration in her eyes. "I figured you'd say that." "Why? Would you like me to stop?" "It's not that. It's just that sometimes I miss you, you know? You're always traveling, always busy." The irony was cruel. She missed him precisely because his absences were necessary for the heist she was planning. "I'll try to travel less," he promised, knowing it was just another lie in a sea of them. The dinner dragged on. Sushi, sashimi, sake, empty conversations about mutual acquaintances, social events, the new car Veronica wanted to buy. Michael played his part perfectly, laughing when he was supposed to laugh, commenting when expected. But inside, he felt like a stranger watching an absurd play. Back at home, Veronica undressed slowly in the bedroom, a silent invitation. Michael claimed fatigue, a headache, and she accepted without much insistence. They lay in the same bed, she sleeping peacefully while he stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of betrayal like a stone in his chest. At 3 a.m, when he was sure Veronica was sound asleep, Michael got up carefully and went down to his office. He turned on the computer and started searching. Veronica's personal files, emails, documents. He needed clues about who she really was. He found old photos from before they met. Veronica at parties, always well-dressed, always next to different men. Older, successful men, the kind who flaunted their wealth. There was a pattern there that he couldn't ignore. He also found a hidden folder on her computer, password protected. He tried a few obvious combinations, birthdays, names, but nothing worked. He would need professional help to access it. He took photos of everything with his phone and sent them to Helen. Found protected files. I need you to access them. The reply came minutes later. Send me the computer tomorrow. I'll crack the password. Michael kept searching. In the drawer of Veronica's desk, he found a notebook. He flipped through the pages and his blood ran cold. They were notes about him. Routines, travel schedules, important meetings. There were even sketches of the house layout, marking where safes, computers, and important documents were located. It was a complete mapping of his life, like a thief studying a target. Further into the notebook, he found names: Ferdinand Layton, Charles Drummond, Robert Silverman. Next to each name, amounts, multi-million-dollar figures, and a note that made his stomach churn. Completed. He took out his phone and searched the first name, Ferdinand Layton. He found news from 3 years ago. A real estate mogul who had suffered a devastating financial blow. His wife of 5 years had disappeared, taking a large part of his fortune. The description of the woman was vague, but there was a photo. Blonde, beautiful, elegant. Could it be Veronica? The image quality was poor, but the resemblance was disturbing. He searched the second name, Charles Drummond, another businessman, this time in the agricultural sector. A similar case 4 years ago. Wife disappeared, fortune compromised. Again, the woman's description fit. Robert Silverman, same pattern. 5 years ago, wife fled with millions, leaving the man practically bankrupt. Michael felt the room spin. Veronica wasn't just an amateur con artist. She was a professional, a predator who chose successful men, married them, gained their trust, and then financially destroyed them. And he was just another name on her list. He took photos of every page of the notebook, sent them to Robert and Helen. You need to see this. She's done this before, several times. Helen's reply came quickly. I'm seeing it. This changes everything. I'll research these names, confirm if it's her. If it is, we have a pattern of serial crimes. This is no longer just fraud, it's a long-term criminal enterprise. Michael went back to bed as the sky began to lighten. Veronica was still asleep, serene, beautiful, deadly. He lay down beside her, keeping his distance, fighting the revulsion he felt. When she woke up at 9, Michael was already dressed, pretending to read emails on his tablet. Good morning, he said, as if nothing had changed. Good morning, darling. She stretched, smiled. Did you sleep well? So. Work on my mind. You need to relax more, she said, getting up and heading to the bathroom. Michael heard the shower start and took the opportunity to check his messages. Robert had sent a preliminary report. Helen managed to track the so-called gardener. Real name Fabian Mendez, extensive criminal record, fraud, embezzlement, system hacking, works on commission, specializes in technological scams, has connections to a larger network. Further down, another crucial piece of information. We've confirmed it. The women in the previous cases are all the same person. Veronica used different names, but the photos we found, even old ones, confirm it. It's her. We're talking about at least 5 victims in the last 8 years, total stolen, estimated at $45 million. Michael closed his eyes. 45 million. 5 men destroyed. 5 lives ruined. And he was supposed to be the 6th, the biggest of them all, because his fortune surpassed all the previous ones combined. Veronica came out of the bathroom, a towel wrapped around her body, her hair dripping. "I'm going out this afternoon," she said casually. "Meeting the girls from the club. I should be back late this afternoon." "All right," Michael said. "I have online meetings all day." She came closer, kissed the top of his head. "I love you." Michael swallowed the bile that rose in his throat. "I love you too." When Veronica left the house, elegant in a designer dress, Michael picked up the phone. "Robert, we need to meet. Now." An hour later, Robert, Helen, and a third man were in his office. "This is Detective August Brody, from the Financial Crimes Division," Robert introduced. "He's following the case unofficially." "Mr. Ford," the detective said, extending his hand. "Mr. Taylor has filled me in. This is bigger than we thought. Your wife is part of a criminal organization that has been operating for years." "Organization? It's not just her and this Fabian guy." "No." Helen opened her laptop, showing a complex organizational chart. "Fabian is just an operator. We've identified at least 6 people working with her. Hackers, document forgers, money launderers. They have a complete structure." "And all the men she robbed before?" Michael asked. "Most of them never reported it," the detective explained. "Shame, fear of exposure, or they simply didn't have enough evidence. One of them tried, but she had already disappeared with a fake identity. It's a very well-planned operation." Michael sat down heavily. "How could I have been so blind?" "You weren't blind," Helen said gently. "She's a professional. She studied you before she approached you. She created the perfect persona for what you were looking for. It's psychological manipulation at the highest level." "What do I do now?" Michael looked at each of them. "Tell me what to do." The detective leaned forward. "We have 2 options. First, we arrest her today based on what we already have. Espionage equipment installed, evidence of conspiracy, but she could argue that she hasn't committed the main crime yet. She could have good lawyers. She could be out in a few years." "And the second option?" "We let her proceed a little further. We monitor her every step, document everything. When she tries to execute the transfer of funds, we catch her in the act. Then we'll have a consummated crime, irrefutable evidence, and we can take down the entire organization with her." "Is that risky?" Michael asked. "Yes," the detective admitted. "But with the team I'll have working on it, and with your full cooperation we can minimize the risks. We'll protect your assets, set traps in the accounts, monitor her every move. When she thinks she's winning, we'll close the net." Michael looked out the window, seeing the perfect garden, the glistening pool, the entire facade of happiness. His life had become. "How long will this take?" "She said she needed 2 weeks. I'd say in 10 days we'll have everything we need." 10 days of living a lie. 10 days of pretending to love a woman who was planning to destroy him. 10 days of maintaining his sanity while everything he believed in crumbled. "All right," he said finally. "Let's do it. But I want guarantees that you'll catch all of them. I don't want anyone from this organization to escape." "You have it," the detective promised. "And Mr. Ford, what you're doing requires courage. It will help. Dismantle a network that has ruined many lives." After everyone left, Michael was alone in his office. He looked at the wedding photo on the shelf. He and Veronica, smiling, in love. Or at least that's what he thought at the time. Now he saw that image with different eyes. He saw a predator and her prey. He saw the beginning of an elaborate farce. He took the photo and turned it face down in the drawer. The man in that photo no longer existed. That innocence had died that morning, when a street girl cared more about him than the woman who had sworn to love him forever. And as he waited for Veronica to return from her supposed meeting with friends, where she was likely meeting with her accomplices, Michael made a promise to himself. When it was all over, when justice was served, he would find Isabella, the girl he barely knew but who had completely changed the course of his life. She deserved gratitude. She deserved real help. She deserved something Veronica never had, honesty and a sincere heart. Chapter 3. The following days were the most difficult of Michael's life. Waking up next to Veronica, kissing her good morning, asking how she slept, commenting on the weather, the day's plans. Every gesture was an act, every word a necessary lie. He felt like an actor in a macabre play, where misplacing one line could cost him everything. Helen and her team worked in silence, like invisible shadows. They installed monitoring systems on Veronica's devices, tracked every call, every message, every login she made. Detective August Brody coordinated everything from a makeshift command center in a rented office 3 blocks from the mansion. Robert visited Michael daily, always with new information, always with more pieces of the puzzle. On the morning of the 3rd day after the discovery, Michael had to travel for real. An unmissable meeting in Washington, D.C., contracts that couldn't wait. He told Veronica at breakfast, watching her reaction. "I have to go to D.C. tomorrow," he said, spreading jam on his toast. 2 days, Max." Veronica's eyes lit up just for a fraction of a second, but Michael noticed. She was excited by the news. More time alone meant more opportunities for her and her accomplices to advance their plan. "All right, darling," she said with a smile. "I'll miss you." "I'll miss you too," he lied, taking a sip of coffee. As soon as she went upstairs to get ready, Michael sent a message to the detective. "I'm traveling tomorrow. D.C., 2 days. Increase surveillance." The reply came immediately. "We're already preparing. We'll install extra cameras and microphones. She won't make a move without us documenting it." That night, Michael barely slept. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling Veronica breathe beside him. How could someone be so cold, so calculating? She slept peacefully, without a shred of guilt, without a shadow of remorse. How many times had she done this before? How many men had lain beside her, confident in love, not knowing they were sleeping with a viper? The next morning, Thursday, the driver came to pick him up at 7. Veronica came down in her robe to say goodbye, kissed him lingeringly at the door, told him she loved him. Michael returned the kiss, held her hands, looked into her eyes, and saw only emptiness. How had he not noticed before? How could those blue eyes that once seemed so sincere now reveal only coldness? "I love you," he said one last time before getting into the car. "I love you too," she replied, waving as the car pulled away. Michael looked in the rearview mirror and saw Veronica still standing at the door. The moment the car turned the corner, she spun on her heel and quickly went back inside. Michael imagined what she would do in the next few minutes. She would pick up the encrypted phone, call Fabian or another member of the ring, tell them she was free, that she had 2 days to work without interruptions. And his intuition was right. Half an hour later, already on his private jet to D.C., he received a message from Helen. "She just made 3 calls. One to Fabian, another to a number we've identified as belonging to a hacker named Dennis Smith, and a third to a woman, Patricia Mendoza, who we believe is the mastermind of the operation." Patricia Mendoza. Another name, another piece. "Who are these people?" Michael typed. The reply came with attached files. "Patricia Mendoza, 52, no official occupation, but lives in a luxury apartment in Soho and drives an imported car. Has a police record for embezzlement from 20 years ago, but nothing recent. We believe she's the head of the operation, the one who recruits and trains the women to carry out the scams." Women, plural. Michael felt a chill. How many Veronicas were out there? In D.C., the meeting was torture. Michael tried to focus on the numbers, the contracts, the negotiations, but his mind was in New York, in his house, imagining what Veronica and her accomplices were doing at that very moment. He checked his phone compulsively, waiting for updates from Helen or the detective. At 2 in the afternoon, a message. "Fabian has arrived. They went into the office together, installing more equipment." At 4, another message. "Dennis Smith has also arrived. They're accessing your computers, trying to break the additional protections we installed. We left some fake passwords for them to find, as planned." At 6, a longer update. "They're having a meeting in the living room. 5 people present. Veronica, Fabian, Dennis, Patricia, and a 5th individual we've identified as Roger Lewis, a money laundering specialist. Audio recorded. They're discussing the final details of the transfer. They plan to execute everything next Monday when you're in Miami. Miami. Michael had scheduled another trip for Monday, a rescheduling of the meeting he had cancelled. Veronica knew this. She knew he would be out of the country, far away, unable to react quickly. It was the perfect moment for the heist. Michael replied, "And will we be ready?" "We will be. The detective already has arrest warrants prepared. We'll wait for them to initiate the transfer and then we'll move in, a perfect sting." On Friday, Michael returned to New York. Veronica greeted him with a tight hug, said the house felt empty without him. She prepared a special dinner, lit candles, put on soft music. She was being the perfect wife, perhaps because she knew these were the final days of the charade. Soon, in her mind, she would be rich and free, and Michael would be just another fool left behind. They dined face to face, she talking excitedly about a possible trip to Tuscany they could take next month. Michael smiled, agreed, knowing she would never be there. On Monday, when he was supposedly in Miami, Veronica and her friends would be trying to steal everything from him, and instead of an Italian paradise, her destination would be very different. After dinner, they sat on the living room sofa. Veronica rested her head on his shoulder, a gesture that used to bring comfort but now only brought revulsion. "Michael, can I ask you something?" she said softly. "Of course. Have you ever thought about making a will?" The question was so unexpected that Michael almost lost his composure. "A will? Why?" "It's nothing morbid, darling. It's just that we never know what might happen. You travel so much, take so many planes. It would be prudent to have everything organized, don't you think?" Michael understood instantly. She was trying to find out if there were any documents that could complicate the theft, any legal protections she didn't know about, or worse, she was planting the seeds for an even more sinister plan. "I've never really thought about it," he said, keeping his voice calm. "Why? Are you worried about something?" No, it's just a precaution." Veronica kissed his neck. "I want to make sure we're protected, both of us. Both of us. As if they were a real couple, as if she cared about his well-being." The hypocrisy was impressively cruel. "I'll think about it," Michael promised. That night, after Veronica fell asleep, he went down to the office and called Robert. She asked about a will. There was a silence on the other end. "That's worrying. It could mean they're considering scenarios beyond simple theft." "What do you mean?" Robert hesitated. "Michael, in some of the previous cases, the men didn't just lose money. Some had strange accidents after the scam was discovered. Nothing proven, but the coincidences are too many. Are you saying she might want to kill me? I'm saying we need to be very careful. The detective is increasing your personal security. From now on, you'll have discreet 24-hour protection." Michael looked at the stairs leading to the bedroom where Veronica slept. Was the woman upstairs capable of murder? How far did her coldness go? On Saturday, Michael woke up with renewed determination. He would not be a victim. He would be the instrument of justice. Helen had hacked the ring's devices, and now they had access to everything. Messages, plans, conversations. It was like having a complete map of the criminal operation. During breakfast, while Veronica read a fashion magazine, Michael's phone vibrated discreetly. A message from Helen with an audio file. "Listen to this." Michael put in his earbud, pretending to listen to music, and pressed play. It was a recording of a call between Veronica and Patricia from the previous night. Patricia's voice was firm, authoritative. "Are you sure he doesn't suspect anything?" "Absolutely," Veronica replied. "He's so predictable, so confident. He thinks he built an empire by being smart, but he doesn't see when he's being manipulated right under his own nose." "And the security system he installed on the accounts? Dennis has already cracked everything. We have full access. On Monday, when he's in Miami, we'll make the transfers in sequence. First the domestic accounts, then the offshore ones. In 2 hours, everything will be in ghost accounts spread across tax havens. By the time he realizes, we'll be gone. How many millions this time? By my calculations, we'll be able to transfer about $80 million liquid. The rest is in assets we'll have to leave behind, but $80 million is more than enough. It's the biggest score yet." "I know. Veronica laughed, a laugh Michael had never heard before, harsh and victorious. After this one, I can retire. Maybe a few years in Europe, away from all this. You deserve it, V. You worked this one well. 7 years is a long time to keep the mask on. It was worth it. Every boring dinner, every tedious trip, every night faking passion, it was all worth it for 80 million. Michael paused the audio. His hands were shaking. Every dinner, every trip, every night. It had all been a lie. 7 years of his life, wasted on a woman who never felt anything but greed. He looked at Veronica, still flipping through the magazine, and she caught his gaze. She smiled at him, that sweet, charming smile she used so well. "Everything okay, darling?" "Everything's fine," he replied, forcing a smile back. The weekend dragged on. Michael and Veronica went out for lunch on Saturday, attended a social event on Sunday. She was particularly affectionate, constantly touching him, laughing at his jokes, being the model wife. Michael understood now. It was the final performance, the last act before the big heist. She wanted him to board the plane to Miami on Monday without any suspicion, completely certain he had a loving wife waiting at home. On Sunday night, already in bed, Veronica turned to him. "I'm going to miss you so much these days in Miami." "I'll miss you, too." She kissed his neck, his jaw, his lips. Michael reciprocated mechanically, fighting the nausea he felt. This was the hardest part, faking intimacy with someone who was betraying him in every possible way. When she finally fell asleep, Michael stayed awake once more, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow was Monday. Tomorrow it would all be over. He picked up his phone and saw a message from Detective Brody. "Everything's ready for tomorrow. Team is in position. Warrants are signed. When they initiate the transfers, we move," Michael replied. "I'll pretend to fly to Miami, but I'll be hiding in the command center with you. I want to see the moment you arrest her." "Not a good idea, Michael. It could be dangerous." "I don't care. I need to see this. I need to be there." There was a long pause before the reply. "All right, but you stay exactly where I tell you. No improvising." "Promised." Monday morning dawned with a gray sky over New York. It seemed appropriate, Michael thought, a mood that matched what was to come. He got up early, showered, dressed as if he were really traveling. He packed his bag, went down for breakfast. Veronica was radiant. She wore a light dress, was made up, perfumed. She prepared breakfast herself, something she rarely did. Scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, natural juice. The last meal before ruining his life. "Will everything be okay while I'm gone?" Michael asked. "Of course, I'll take the time to rest, see some friends." She held his hand across the table. "Close this deal and come back soon, okay?" "I'll try." At 10 o'clock, the car arrived. Michael took his bag, kissed Veronica at the door, waved as the vehicle pulled away. But instead of going to the airport, the driver, actually, an undercover police officer, took him to the rented office where the detective was coordinating the operation. "Welcome to the command center," Brody said as Michael entered. The room was filled with equipment, monitors showing different angles of the mansion, technicians with headsets listening to audio feeds. It was like a military intelligence hub. Helen was there, typing rapidly on a laptop. "Mr. Ford," she said without looking up from the screen, "the show starts in 15 minutes. Michael sat in a chair, his eyes fixed on the monitors. He saw Veronica in the living room, on the phone. Fabian arrived, then Dennis. Patricia entered through the back door. Roger was the last. All of them there, gathered in his house, ready to rob him. "Audio," the detective requested. A technician activated the microphones, and the room filled with the criminals' voices. "Everything ready?" Patricia was asking. "Everything," Dennis replied. "I have full access to the systems. I can start the transfers whenever you give the signal." "And the ghost account?" Veronica questioned. "Active and running," said Roger. "The money will pass through 7 different countries before reaching its final destination. Impossible to trace." Veronica looked at the clock. "His plane took off 10 minutes ago. We have at least 5 hours before he lands in Miami and can notice anything. More than enough time." "Then let's begin," Patricia ordered. Michael watched Dennis sit in front of his computer, the same computer Michael used every day, and start typing. On the command center's auxiliary screen, Helen showed in real time what Dennis was doing. "Accessing the first account," she narrated, "initiating a $12 million transfer." "Let him complete the first one," the detective instructed the team. "We need the crime to be consummated." The seconds felt like hours. Michael saw the numbers. On the screen, saw his money being moved, saw years of work being stolen before his eyes, but he knew it was necessary. It was the only way to ensure they were all arrested with irrefutable evidence. "First transfer complete," Helen announced. $12 million has gone to the ghost account." Michael closed his eyes for a moment. It was real. It was really happening. "Second transfer initiated," Helen continued. $20 million this time." On the screen, Veronica and the others were celebrating. She hugged Fabian, kissed Patricia's cheek. "We're doing it," she said, emotional. "We're really doing it." "Go now," the detective ordered. "Alpha team, front entrance, beta team from the back. Gamma team, block all exits, nobody escapes." Michael watched on the monitors as the mansion's doors were breached simultaneously. Plainclothes officers stormed the house in a matter of seconds. Screams, confusion, people running. Fabian tried to flee through the kitchen but was intercepted. Dennis immediately raised his hands. Roger tried to reach for something in his pocket and was tackled. Veronica stood frozen in the middle of the living room, her face white, her eyes wide. Patricia tried to say something, but an officer was already reading her rights. "All in custody," a voice came over the radio. "5 suspects in custody." Michael stood up. "I need to go over there." "Not yet," the detective said. "Let the team do a security sweep first." But 10 minutes later, Michael was entering his own home. It looked different now, violated by the police raid, marked by the betrayal that had occurred there. Officers were collecting equipment, photographing evidence, bagging computers and documents. Veronica was sitting on the sofa, handcuffed, a female officer beside her. When she saw Michael, her face went through a sequence of emotions: surprise, confusion, understanding, and finally fear. "You," she whispered. "You didn't travel." "No," Michael said, stopping in front of her. "I didn't. In fact, I've known everything for a week." "Impossible," she stammered. "You couldn't have known." "A street girl told me. Remember the girl who's always at the gate? She saw everything. She warned me." Veronica closed her eyes, as if she'd been punched. "Ruined by a street kid," she muttered with bitter irony. "No," Michael corrected. "Ruined by your own choices, by the lies, the greed, the coldness. The girl just opened my eyes." "Michael, please," she began. And for the first time in 7 years, he saw something that could be real fear in her eyes. "We can talk about this. I can explain." "Explain what? 7 years of lies? The 5 men you robbed before me? The 80 million you were trying to steal today?" She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. There was no denying it, not with police collecting evidence all over the house, not with the computers showing the transfers she had just made. "A lifetime," Michael said, feeling the emotion finally overflow. "A whole lifetime I believed in you, I loved you. I built a future with you, and it was all a lie. Michael, No." He held up a hand, cutting her off. "You have nothing to say that I want to hear." Detective Brody approached. "Is she under arrest?" "Yes, all 5 of them. And we have warrants for 3 more people connected to the organization. We're going to dismantle the whole thing." Michael nodded, feeling an immense emptiness. It was a victory, but it didn't feel victorious. It just felt like the end of something that was never real. "Take her away," he said, turning his back. Chapter V. The weeks following the arrest were a whirlwind of emotions, legal proceedings, and rebuilding. Michael watched from a distance as the justice system did its work. Veronica and her accomplices were formally charged with racketeering, grand larceny, computer fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit fraud on a massive scale. The evidence was overwhelming, documented in every detail by the police operation. The case made headlines. "Ring that stole over 50 million dismantled in New York," read the New York Times. Businessman evades $1 million scam thanks to alert from homeless child, reported the Daily News. Television cameras surrounded the mansion for days. Reporters wanted interviews. The story became a sensation on social media. Michael refused all interviews. He didn't want exposure, didn't want fame for his pain. He just wanted silence and time to process what had happened. Robert took the lead on communications, giving brief technical statements, always protecting his friend and client's privacy. Helen completed the full audit of Michael's finances. The damage had been minimal, only the $12 million from the first transfer, which they managed to partially recover. But the emotional damage was immeasurable. How do you trust again after being betrayed so profoundly? How? Do you open your heart when you discover you've spent 7 years living a lie? A week after the arrests, Michael was in his office when Robert arrived with a thick folder. "Complete investigation report," he announced, placing the document on the desk. "Do you want to know everything, or would you rather live without the details?" Michael looked at the folder. Part of him wanted to burn it, to forget Veronica had ever existed, to erase those 7 years from his memory. But another part, the rational part that had built an empire through information and strategy, needed to know. "I want to know everything." Robert sat down and opened the folder. Veronica, real name Anna Paulson Sylvester, born in Des Moines, Iowa. Had a difficult childhood. Mother worked as a housemaid. Absent father. At 18, she moved to New York with dreams of being a model. It didn't work out. She met Patricia Mendoza in a nightclub and was recruited into the organization. She was 18, Michael murmured. So young. Patricia trained her, taught her how to dress, speak, carry herself in elite circles, how to identify wealthy targets, how to win them over, how to gain their trust. Anna was talented, beautiful, and intelligent. She became Patricia's star pupil. And the other men? Robert turned the pages. Ferdinand Layton was the first, 8 years ago. She was 27 at the time. She was married to him for 2 years, stole $4 million and disappeared. Ferdinand never recovered emotionally, had a nervous breakdown, lost his business. Today he lives modestly in Philadelphia. Michael felt his chest tighten. A broken man, a ruined life. And Veronica had simply moved on to the next. Charles Drummond was the second, agribusiness entrepreneur, 60 years old, recently widowed. She approached him at a charity event just like she did with you. They married after 6 months. She stayed for 3 years, stole $7 million. Charles tried to sue her, but she had completely vanished, changed her identity. And him? He tried to rebuild, but could never trust anyone again. He died 2 years ago, alone. The words landed like stones in Michael's stomach. A man who had died alone because a woman had destroyed his ability to trust. Robert Silverman, Robert continued. Owner of a pharmacy chain, 52 years old, she stole $9 million. Robert discovered the scam in time to recover. Some of the money, but the scandal ruined his reputation. He sold everything and moved to Spain. Then there was Anthony Figueroa, a hotel industry entrepreneur, married for 4 years. She stole $12 million. Anthony is alive, managed to recover financially, but according to his police statement, he never had another serious relationship. And the fifth? Edward Cameron, a financial market investor, the most recent case before you. She stole $15 million 3 years ago. Edward was the luckiest. He had insurance and protections that limited the damage, but he still lost a lot. Michael did the math mentally. 4 million, 7 million, 9 million, 12 million, 15 million, 47 million in total from the others, and with him it would have been 80 million, 127 million stolen over 8 years. That's right. And considering Patricia gets a percentage and there are the operational costs, we're still talking about a fortune. Where is this money? Helen has traced a good portion of it. Accounts in tax havens, investments in overseas real estate under false names, works of art, jewelry. The IRS and Interpol are working to recover everything. You'll likely get the 12 million back, and you might also receive compensation from the confiscated assets. I don't care about the money, Michael said, and it was true. I want it to be used to compensate the other victims. Ferdinand, Charles, all of them. They deserve justice too. Robert nodded with respect. I'll inform the detective. I'm sure it can be arranged. And the trial? When will it be? The DA's office is building the case. It should go to trial in 6 months. With the evidence we have, a conviction is practically certain. We're talking about sentences that could reach 20 years or more. 20 years. Veronica would be over 50 when she got out. All her beauty, all her youth wasted behind bars. Michael tried to feel satisfaction at this, but all he felt was emptiness. And Patricia? She's the key player, 68 years old. She's done time before. This time she'll probably die in there. The detective believes she might turn on others because the organization is bigger than we thought. There's evidence of other women trained by her, operating in other states, maybe even other countries. How many lives destroyed, Michael thought. How many men like him, like Ferdinand, like Charles, falling into the trap of a beautiful lie. After Robert left, Michael was alone in his office. The mansion was too quiet now. Mrs. Martha continued to work, but she avoided talking about the matter, only offering him coffee and kind words. The driver, George, came and went, discreet and professional, but the house felt haunted by memories of a life that never existed. Michael slept little. When he closed his eyes, he saw Veronica's face. Sometimes it was the sweet, loving Veronica he thought he knew. Other times it was the cold, calculating woman he had heard on the recordings. He would wake up in the middle of the night, sweating, confused about which one was real, if any of them had ever been real. Helen suggested therapy. Robert agreed. You've been through a trauma, Michael. Betrayal on a level few experience. You need to process this with professional help. Michael resisted at first. He had always been strong, always solved his own problems. But one night, 2 weeks after the arrests, he broke. He was alone in the living room, looking at the wedding photo he had taken out of the drawer. He looked so happy, so naive, so completely deceived, and he cried. For the first time since it all began, he allowed himself to feel the full pain of the betrayal. He cried for the lost time, the wasted feelings, the broken trust. He cried for the man in that photo who believed he had found love, and he cried for the man he had become, cynical, distrustful, scarred by the experience. The next day he called the therapist Helen had recommended, Dr. Paul Mendez, a specialist in trauma and emotional reconstruction. The first session was difficult, telling the story out loud, reliving every moment, every discovery, every lie. Unraveled. But it was also liberating. Dr. Paul didn't judge, didn't offer empty platitudes. He just listened, asked the right questions, helped Michael understand his feelings. You're going to have to rebuild your ability to trust, Dr. Paul said in the third session. Not in Veronica, she doesn't deserve it, but in yourself, in your judgment, in your instincts. Because in the end, it was your instinct that saved you. You realized something was wrong and you acted. But it took me 7 years to realize. Because she was good at what she did. Professional, trained, experienced. You're not a fool for being deceived, Michael. You're human. You wanted to believe in love, in partnership, in family. That's not weakness, it's hope. The words helped, but the wound was still open. A month after the arrests, Michael finally found the courage to do something he had been putting off. He left the mansion on a Saturday morning, alone, without a driver, without security. He drove to the small park where Isabella used to sleep. She was there, sitting on the same bench, with the same plastic bag beside her. When she saw Michael approaching, her face lit up. "Mister!" she shouted, running to him. Michael knelt and she hugged him. A sincere hug, without ulterior motives, without calculations, just pure gratitude and affection. "Hi, Isabella," he said, his eyes welling up. "How are you?" "I'm good, mister. I saw on the news what happened. The lady was really bad, wasn't she?" "She was, but thanks to you she couldn't hurt me." Isabella smiled, proud. "I helped?" "You helped a lot. You saved my life, actually." Michael sat on the bench and she sat beside him. "Isabella, I need to thank you properly, and I want to make you a proposal." "What proposal, mister?" Michael took a deep breath. "I've talked to some people, social workers, lawyers. You don't have a family, you have nowhere to go. I'd like to help you. For real, not just with money. I'd like to make sure you have a home, an education, a future." Isabella looked at him with those light brown eyes, too serious for a 12-year-old. "Do you want to adopt me?" "Not exactly. I'm single now. The adoption process would be complicated. But I can place you in a very good foster home with a family that has already agreed to take you in. Good, trustworthy people. And I'll pay for everything, private school, clothes, everything you need, and I'll visit you. I'll be present in your life." "Why do you want to do this?" "Because you deserve it. Because when no one cared about me, when everyone around me was fake, you were honest. You gave me the truth when I needed it most. I can't let that go unrewarded." Tears streamed down Isabella's face. "No one has ever wanted to take care of me before. Someone does now." Michael held her small hand. "Are you in?" She nodded vigorously, unable to speak, just crying and smiling at the same time. 2 weeks later, Isabella was living with the Santos family, a couple of teachers who couldn't have children and had always wanted to foster a child. Mary and John Santos were kind, patient people, exactly the kind of stable environment Isabella needed. Michael visited every week, brought gifts, talked with her, followed her progress in school. Watching Isabella blossom was one of the few things that brought genuine joy to Michael in those difficult months. She started to smile more, to talk more, to open up. The principal of the private school where Michael enrolled her reported that she was extremely intelligent, absorbing knowledge like a sponge. With support and structure, she could go far. During one of his visits, Isabella showed him a drawing she had made in art class. It was a house with 3 people in front, a tall man, a woman, and a girl. "It's us," she explained. "You, Aunt Mary, and me." Michael felt his heart ache. "It's beautiful, Izzy. You're like my godfather, right? My guardian angel." "I think you're my guardian angel," he replied, ruffling her hair. The trial took place 6 months later. Michael had to testify, to tell his story before a packed courtroom, with Veronica sitting just a few feet away. She looked different, thinner, her hair showing dark roots without the expensive treatments, her clothes the simple prison uniform. But her eyes were still the same, cold and calculating. When Michael finished his testimony, she asked to speak. The judge allowed it. Anna, now without the false identity of Veronica, stood up. "Michael," she said, her voice trembling, "I'm sorry, I know this doesn't change anything, but I need to say it. At some point in the early years, I really did care about you. It wasn't all a lie." Michael looked at her for a long moment. "Maybe that's true," he said finally. "Maybe somewhere, under all the lies, there was a fragment of something real. But you chose greed. You chose to destroy instead of build. And now you're going to pay for it." She lowered her head, defeated. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. The verdict: guilty on all charges. Patricia, guilty. Fabian, guilty. Dennis, guilty. Roger, guilty. The sentences were heavy. Veronica got 19 years. Patricia, 25. The others between 12 and 17 years. When Michael left the courthouse, dozens of reporters surrounded him. "Mr. Ford, how do you feel about the verdict? Can you forgive your ex-wife? Will you try to rebuild your love life?" He stopped, looked at the cameras and said only, "I got justice. Now I want peace. Please respect my privacy." And he walked to his car, ignoring the other questions. The months turned into a year. Michael sold the mansion. He could no longer live there. Every room brought back memories he preferred to forget. He bought a modern apartment in Greenwich Village, smaller, cozier, without the weight of the past. He redecorated everything with the help of a designer, creating a space that was his alone, without Veronica's ghosts. Business continued. Michael was too good at what he did to let betrayal destroy his empire. He closed important deals, expanded investments, proved to himself that he still had the Midas touch. But now success had a different flavor. It was no longer just about accumulating wealth or proving his worth. It was about building something sustainable, something that could make a difference. Therapy with Dr. Paul continued. Session after session, Michael deconstructed the layers of pain, anger, betrayal. He learned to separate what happened from himself, not to let Veronica's actions define his worth as a person. "You are no less worthy of love because someone deceived you," Dr. Paul would repeat. "You just chose the wrong person. It's not your fault." And slowly, very slowly, Michael began to believe it. 2 years after the arrest, Michael was in a cafe in Williamsburg when he saw a beautiful dark-haired woman laughing with friends at another table. Their eyes met by chance. She smiled shyly, he smiled back. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something. Not love, not yet, but a spark of possibility. She got up to leave, and passing his table, she stopped. "Sorry to be bold," she said, "but aren't you Michael Ford? I read about your case. I'm so sorry for what you went through." "Thank you," he said, surprised by her direct approach. "I'm Caroline, a labor lawyer." She extended her hand and he shook it. "If you ever want to have a coffee without being recognized for controversial cases, give me a call." And she left a card on the table before walking out. Michael stared at the card. Caroline Mendez, labor law. A cell phone number was handwritten on the back. He put the card in his pocket, not knowing if he would call, but liking the fact that for the first time in years, the possibility didn't terrify him. That night, he had dinner with Isabella and the Santos family. The girl was now 14, a freshman in high school, getting excellent grades and talking about becoming a doctor when she grew up. "Uncle Michael," she said excitedly, "I got an A on my biology test. Congratulations, Izzy, I'm so proud of you. And you know what the teacher said? That if I keep this up, I could get a scholarship to medical school at Columbia." Michael smiled, feeling genuine pride. "You'll get it, I'm sure. And if you don't get the scholarship, I'll pay for the university." Mary Santos, who was serving dinner, shook her head. "Michael, you already do so much for her." "I do it because I want to. Because she deserves it. Because she saved me in a way you can't even imagine." After dinner, as he was leaving, Isabella hugged him tightly. "Uncle, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you happy now?" The question caught him off guard. Michael thought for a moment, looking at this girl who had gone from being a street kid to a smart young woman full of dreams and possibilities. He thought of his new apartment, his thriving businesses, the therapy sessions that were helping him heal. He thought of Caroline's card in his pocket, of the possibility of maybe one day trying again. "You know, Izzy," he answered honestly, "I'm still learning to be happy again. It's not easy after everything that happened, but every day gets a little better, and when I see you so smart, so strong, so full of future, it gives me hope. So yes, I'm on the path to happiness." She smiled, a smile that lit up her whole face. "I'm glad, Uncle. You deserve to be happy. You deserve it too, Izzy, and you will be, I promise." In the car, on his way home, Michael turned on the radio and an old song was playing, one he used to listen to before he met Veronica, back when his life was simpler. He hummed along, feeling a lightness he hadn't felt in years. Arriving at his apartment, he took a shower, changed, and sat on the balcony with a glass of wine. The city stretched out before him, millions of lights twinkling in the New York night. Each light was a life. Each life had its struggles, its dramas, its betrayals, and its redemptions. He took out his phone and looked at Caroline's card again. Could he call? Should he try? The fear was still there, the distrust, the memory of the pain. But so was hope, small but persistent, that maybe not all people were like Veronica, that maybe there was still honesty and genuine love in the world. He typed the number into his phone and stared at the screen. He didn't call. He wasn't ready yet. But he saved the contact. Caroline, lawyer, Williamsburg Cafe. One step at a time. That night he slept better than he had in months. No nightmares, no waking up startled, no ghost of Veronica haunting his dreams. Just deep, restorative sleep. The next morning, he woke up to a message from Robert. The IRS recovered another $20 million from the confiscated assets. They're going to distribute it between you and the other victims as you requested. Ferdinand Layton sent a message saying this will help him start his life over. Michael smiled. At least something good was coming out of this nightmare. Men who had been destroyed would have a chance to rebuild their lives. Another message, this time from Helen. Mr. Ford, we've identified 3 more women trained by Patricia operating in D.C. and Los Angeles. The FBI is investigating. Your case helped blow open a whole national operation. You've saved a lot of people you don't even know. Michael took a deep breath. Maybe that was the purpose of it all. Not just his salvation, but the protection of others who could have fallen into the same trap. His pain had served a greater purpose. He had coffee, got dressed, and went to the office. He had an important meeting about a new investment in green technology. Life went on. Business went on. The world kept spinning regardless of his personal wounds. But now, for the first time since Isabella had warned him on that transformative morning, Michael felt he wasn't just surviving. He was truly living. With scars, yes, with caution, certainly, but also with wisdom, strength, and a renewed hope that the best was yet to come. And maybe, just maybe, sometime in the future, when the wounds were completely healed, he would call Caroline. They would have that coffee, they would talk. And who knows? He might discover that it was possible to trust again, to love again, to be happy again. But for now, it was enough to be okay. It was enough to have Isabella in his life. It was enough to have gotten justice. It was enough to wake up every day knowing he had survived a storm that had destroyed weaker men and that he had emerged on the other side not broken, but molded into something stronger. Michael Anderson Ford at 42 had lost 7 years of his life to a lie, but he still had decades ahead of him to live in the truth. And that prospect, finally, made him smile. Life was just beginning to reveal its true possibilities, and he was ready to embrace them, one at a time. Chapter 5. 3 months had passed since Michael saved Caroline's number on his phone. 3 months of looking at that contact, thinking about calling, typing messages he never sent, mustering courage that vanished at the last second. The fear was stronger than he had imagined. Not fear of her specifically, but fear of everything she represented. Vulnerability, trust, the possibility of being deceived again. Dr. Paul noticed his hesitation during one of their therapy sessions. "You want to call her?" he said. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. "I do," Michael admitted. "But every time I pick up the phone, I see Veronica's face. I hear her lies. I feel the betrayal. And I wonder, how will I know if Caroline is different? How do I trust again?" "You don't," Dr. Paul replied honestly. "There's no way to be absolutely certain about anyone. But Michael, if you let the fear of Veronica control your decisions forever, then she wins. She didn't just steal your money, she stole your ability to live fully." The words echoed in Michael's mind for days. He worked, attended meetings, closed deals, but he always came home alone, to the silent apartment, to the solitary life he had built as a shield. It was safe, but it was empty. On a rainy Thursday in March, Michael was reviewing contracts in his office when Isabella called. "Uncle, are you coming for dinner on Saturday? Aunt Mary is making chili." "I'll be there, Izzy. What time?" "Around 7. Oh, and Uncle, can I bring a friend?" "Sophia from school. She doesn't have a family either and is alone on weekends." "Of course you can. The more, the merrier." After hanging up, Michael thought about Isabella. This girl who had been so hurt by life, who had lived on the streets, who had no one. And now she was worried about another lonely child, wanting to include her, to share what little she had. She hadn't let the pain turn her bitter or closed off. On the contrary, she used her experience to empathize with others. If a 14-year-old could be so brave, Michael thought, what was stopping him from at least trying? He picked up his phone before he could change his mind and typed a message to Caroline. "Hi, Caroline, it's Michael. We met at that cafe in Williamsburg a few months ago. You said if I ever wanted to have a coffee without being recognized, I should just call. Is that offer still on the table?" He sent it before he could regret it. His heart pounded. Would she think? It was weird that he took so long to reply. Would she remember him? Would she even want to talk, or had that just been politeness? The reply came 15 minutes later. "Of course I remember. And yes, the offer still stands. How about Saturday morning? I know a hidden cafe in Greenwich Village, 0 chance of paparazzi. 10 o'clock. Michael read and reread the message. The tone was light, friendly, no pressure. "Perfect for 10, he replied. "It's a date. I'll send you the address later. And Michael, I'm glad you called." He put his phone away and stared out the window. He had just taken the first step towards something new. He didn't know if it would work out, if Caroline would be different, if he could manage to trust. But at least he was trying. On Saturday morning, Michael woke up earlier than usual. He changed his outfit 3 times, trying to look casual but put together, interested but not desperate. He ridiculed himself for acting like a teenager on a first date. He was 42, a successful businessman. He had faced down corporate sharks in multi-million-dollar negotiations. Why did a simple coffee make him so nervous? Because it wasn't simple, the voice in his head answered. Because it was the first time he was opening himself up to someone since Veronica. Because he was afraid. The cafe Caroline had chosen was a small, charming place tucked away on a quiet street in Greenwich Village. Rustic wooden tables, plants hanging from the ceiling, the aroma of fresh coffee in the air. Caroline was already there when Michael arrived, sitting near the window, reading something on her phone. She wore jeans, a simple white blouse, her brown hair tied in a loose ponytail, beautiful in a natural, unpretentious way. She looked up when Michael walked in and smiled, that genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Michael, so glad you came." He sat down, feeling a little less nervous. "Thanks for the invitation, or rather for accepting my belated one." Caroline laughed. 3 months isn't that belated. I've waited longer for work emails." The tension began to dissipate. They ordered coffee, a cappuccino for her, a double espresso for him. They talked about light things at first. The weather, New York traffic, the best places to eat in the city. Caroline had an easy way of talking, not forced, not performative. She seemed genuinely interested in what he had to say. "So," she said after a while, "I want you to know you don't have to talk about what happened to you. I read about it in the papers, everyone did. But if you don't want to touch on it, that's fine. We can talk about a million other things." Her consideration touched him. "I appreciate that," Michael said. "But I also don't want it to be the elephant in the room. It happened, it was horrible, I'm recovering. I'm in therapy, I'm rebuilding my life, and I'm here because I decided I'm not going to let what she did stop me from living." Caroline nodded. "I admire that. A lot of people would have shut down completely. I almost did. I'm still fighting the tendency, but I have good reasons not to give up." And he told her about Isabella, about how a street girl had saved him, about how he was now changing her life, about how she inspired him to be brave. Caroline listened attentively, asking questions, showing genuine interest. "That's beautiful," she said when he finished. "You took the worst moment of your life and turned it into something good for someone who needed it. Or she did. Depends on how you look at it." They talked for 2 hours. Michael learned that Caroline was 36, from Chicago, had moved to New York for her master's in labor law. She worked at a boutique firm, mainly defending workers in cases of wrongful termination or harassment. She had lost her mother 5 years ago to a health issue. Her father had remarried and lived in Illinois. She had a younger brother who was a teacher. "Never been married?" Michael asked, and immediately regretted the direct question. But Caroline didn't seem bothered. "Almost. I was engaged 6 years ago. We were about to get married, but 3 months before the ceremony, I found out he had another family. Literally. Another woman, 2 kids, in another city. He traveled for work, or so he said. In reality, he had been living a double life for years." Michael felt a tightness in his chest. "So you were betrayed too?" "I was. Not in the same way you were, without the criminal component. But the lies, the deceit, the breach of trust, that was the same. How did you get over it?" She thought for a moment. "I don't know if I'm completely over it. There are days it still hurts, I still question my judgment. But I decided I wasn't going to let one stupid man destroy my ability to be happy. I went to therapy. I cried a lot. I got angry. I went through all the stages. And here I am 5 years later having coffee with someone interesting and trying again." "So you're not afraid?" "I am, but I'm more afraid of turning 80 and realizing I wasted decades alone because of one mistake in judgment. At 30, life is too short to live in fear." Michael looked at the woman across from him. Caroline wasn't perfect. She admitted to being deceived, to having scars. But there was a strength in her, a wisdom born from pain, that he recognized because he was trying to develop the same in himself. They said goodbye with the promise of meeting again. Nothing forced, nothing rushed. Just the possibility of another coffee, maybe dinner, who knows. On his way to the dinner with Isabella and the Santos family, Michael caught himself smiling. He wasn't in love, far from it, but he was interested, curious, open, and that was more than he had felt in a very long time. The dinner at the Santos's home was warm as always. Isabella introduced Sophia, a shy 13-year-old who lived in a shelter. The two had become friends at school, and Isabella, with her huge heart, had decided that Sophia needed to know what a family dinner was like. Michael watched the girls talking, laughing, being normal teenagers. Sophia started out shy but opened up over the course of the evening. John Santos told bad jokes that made everyone laugh. Mary served the best chili Michael had ever eaten. It was simple, it was normal, it was exactly what he needed. "Uncle Michael," Isabella said as they helped wash the dishes after dinner, "you're different today." "Different how?" "Lighter. You're smiling more." Michael laughed. "I had a good day. I met someone interesting." Isabella's eyes lit up. "A lady?" "Maybe," he replied, teasing. She let out a squeal of excitement. "Uncle, you have to tell me everything." "There's not much to tell yet. We had coffee, we talked, it was nice, that's it." "But you liked her?" Michael thought for a moment. "I did. She seems honest, real. But let's take it slow, Izzy. I don't want to rush things." Isabella hugged him. "I'm happy for you, Uncle. You deserve to be happy. And if this lady makes you smile like that, it's already a good sign." In the following weeks, Michael and Caroline saw each other more often. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a movie. A movie turned into a walk in Central Park. They talked about everything: books, films, politics, work, dreams, fears. Caroline told funny stories from her office. Michael talked about the challenges of his business. They laughed. A lot. Disagreed on some things, agreed on others. And slowly, very slowly, Michael felt the walls he had built around his heart begin to crack. They didn't crumble. Not yet. But there were fissures, small openings, where the light was getting in. A month after their first coffee, Caroline invited him for dinner at her place. A small but cozy apartment in the West Village, full of plants, books and art she collected from local artists. She cooked for him a mushroom risotto that was perfect. After dinner they sat on the sofa with wine. The conversation flowed naturally, until Caroline turned serious. "Michael, can I ask you a direct question?" "Of course." "What do you want from this?" "From us?" "Because I need to be honest. I'm starting to like you. A lot. But I also know you've been through something traumatic. And I don't want to push, I don't want to rush, but I also need to know if you're here because you really want to be, or if you're just testing the waters." Her honesty disarmed him. Michael took a deep breath. "I'm here because I want to be. You make me feel things I thought I'd never feel again. You make me laugh, you make me think, you make me want to be better. But Caroline, I'm scared. I'm so scared of trusting the wrong person again, and it wouldn't be fair to you if I didn't admit that." "I understand." She took his hand. "And you know what? I'm scared too, because my ex destroyed me in a way too. He also made me question my judgment. But I'm here, trying, because I believe you're worth the risk. The question is, do you think I'm worth the risk?" Michael looked at this woman, at her sincere eyes, her kind smile, the vulnerability she showed by opening up like this. "I do," he said. "You are definitely worth the risk." She leaned in and kissed him. It was soft, careful, full of emotion, but unhurried. Michael kissed her back, feeling something inside him heal a little more. It wasn't the intense, blind love he had felt for Veronica at the beginning. It was something more mature, more conscious, more real. When they parted, Caroline rested her forehead against his. "Let's take it slow, okay? No pressure, no impossible expectations, just two wounded adults trying to find happiness together." "Slow is perfect," he agreed. That night, driving home, Michael called Dr. Paul. Even though it was late, he needed to share. "I think I'm ready to try again," he said. "I'm still afraid, but I met someone who makes the fear seem smaller than the possibility of being happy." Dr. Paul on the other end smiled. Michael could hear it in his voice. "That's real progress, Michael. I'm proud of you." But there was one obstacle Michael hadn't foreseen. 2 weeks later, he was having dinner with Caroline when his phone rang. It was Robert, his voice tense. "Michael, I need to warn you about something. Veronica is being transferred to a women's prison near New York, and she's asked to speak with you." "What? Why?" "I don't know, but her lawyer contacted me. She wants a visit, says she needs to talk to you in person." Michael felt his stomach turn. "I don't want to see her." "You don't have to. You have every right to refuse. I just thought you should know." Caroline noticed the change in his face. "What is it?" he told her. About Veronica's request, about how just the mention of her still affected him. Caroline listened in silence and then said, "Do you think you should go?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to tell her to go to hell. Another part is curious about what she wants to say. Can I give you my opinion?" "Of course." "I think you should go. Not for her, but for you." Caroline held his hand. "She still has power over you, Michael. The fact that a phone call about her affects you like this proves it. Maybe hearing what she has to say, closing this chapter face to face, will help you shut that door for good. What if it messes with me? What if I come back an emotional wreck? Then you talk to your therapist, you talk to me, you process it. But at least you won't have this ghost haunting you." Michael thought about it for days. He talked to Dr. Paul, who agreed with Caroline. He talked to Isabella, who surprisingly said, "If you need answers, Uncle, go get them. Just don't let her hurt you again." Finally, 3 weeks later, Michael found himself walking into a women's correctional facility in the New York metropolitan area. The security process was long and humiliating. Searches, metal detectors, protocols. But he was finally led to a visiting room, where Veronica was already waiting. She looked different, very different. Her blonde hair had dark roots showing, without the expensive treatments she used to get. Her skin, bare of makeup, showed lines he had never noticed. The prison uniform, orange and baggy, was a far cry from designer dresses. She looked smaller, older, more human. When she saw him, her eyes filled with tears. "Michael, thank you for coming." He sat down, keeping his expression neutral. "What do you want, Veronica? Or should I call you Anna?" "You can call me whatever you want." She wiped her tears. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you. I know what I did was unforgivable. But you need to know that I'm sorry, I really am. Are you sorry you got caught, or sorry you did it?" She hesitated, and in that hesitation, Michael saw the truth. "Both," she admitted finally. "I'm sorry I got caught because I'm here, paying for what I did. But I'm also genuinely sorry for what I did to you. Why should I believe anything you say? You shouldn't. I lied to you for 7 years. Why would you believe me now?" She looked down at her own hands, her nails unpolished, unkempt. "But I want you to know the truth, even if you don't believe it." "What truth?" "That at some point I stopped pretending." Veronica looked up, and Michael saw something that could have been sincerity. "In the 3rd or 4th year of our marriage, I realized I liked you. For real. It wasn't just a job anymore. You were kind, smart, funny. You treated me well. And I started to question whether I should go through with the plan. But you did. I did. Because I was afraid of Patricia. Because I was already in too deep. Because greed spoke louder. And I hate myself for it every single day." Michael studied her. Was she telling the truth? Was it possible that somewhere, under all the lies, there had been a fragment of real feeling? And if it was true, did it change anything? "Even if it's true," he said finally, "it doesn't change what you did. It doesn't erase the lies, the theft, the betrayal. You chose money over me, over us, over any chance of something real. I know, and I'm going to spend the next 19 years living with that choice. Why did you call me here, Veronica? To ease your conscience?" "No." She shook her head. "I called you because I wanted you to know it wasn't your fault. Nothing that happened was because you weren't good enough or smart enough, or because something was lacking in you. It was me, my choices, my greed, my cowardice. And if you're having a hard time trusting someone new, opening up again, please don't let what I did destroy your chances at happiness. Michael felt something shift inside him. Maybe forgiveness, maybe just understanding. "I'm trying," he said. "I've met someone who makes me want to try again." For the first time, Veronica smiled, a sad but genuine smile. "I'm happy for you." Chapter 6. Michael left the prison feeling different. Not healed, not completely free from the weight of the past, but lighter. The conversation with Veronica hadn't erased what she did, but it had provided a strange kind of closure. She had taken responsibility, acknowledged that the fault was hers, not his, and that, in some twisted way, freed him. Caroline was waiting for him in the parking lot. She had offered to come with him, but Michael had needed to do this alone. When he saw her leaning against the car, her loose hair blowing in the breeze, he knew he had made the right decision in giving the two of them a chance. "How was it?" she asked as he approached. "Strange, difficult, but necessary." He hugged her, feeling the comfort of that simple gesture. "I think I can finally close this chapter." "I'm happy for you." Caroline kissed his forehead. "And now, do you want to go home, or would you rather do something to take your mind off things?" "Let's go to the park, just talk." They went to Central Park. They walked around the reservoir, watching families having picnics, children flying kites, couples holding hands. Life happening in its everyday simplicity. Michael told Caroline about the conversation, about what Veronica had said, about how he felt. "Do you believe her?" Caroline asked. "That she really cared at some point?" "I don't know, maybe. But it doesn't matter anymore either. Whatever she felt or didn't feel, she made her choices. And I'm making my choices now too." "And what are your choices?" Michael stopped walking and turned to Caroline. "I choose not to let the past dictate my future. I choose to trust again, even with fear. I choose you, Caroline, if you'll still have me." She smiled, that smile that lit up her whole face. "I'll have you, baggage, scars and all." They kissed right there, in the middle of the park, under the ancient trees, sealing a promise not of perfection, but of an honest attempt. The following months brought changes. Caroline met Isabella and the two hit it off instantly. Isabella, always perceptive, pulled Caroline aside on the first visit and said, "You're cool, but if you hurt my uncle, you'll have to deal with me." Caroline laughed and promised in all seriousness, "I will never intentionally hurt him. I have too much respect for what you've both been through." Michael slowly integrated Caroline into his life. She met Robert and Helen, had dinner with him and the Santos family, was gradually introduced to the few business partners Michael considered friends. And each introduction was easier than the last, each step toward something serious, less frightening. It wasn't perfect. There were moments when Michael retreated, when fear spoke louder, when a word or gesture from Caroline reminded him of Veronica, and he would shut down. But Caroline was patient. She understood, and when he apologized, explained, she would simply say, "We're in this together. No rush." At work, Michael continued to thrive. He closed a major deal with European investors, expanded operations into the renewable energy sector, and saw his empire grow even larger. But now success had a different taste. It was no longer just about accumulating wealth or proving his worth. It was about building something sustainable, something that could make a difference. Inspired by Isabella's story, Michael created a foundation, the Renaissance Institute, dedicated to helping homeless children. They offered shelter, education, psychological assistance, and family integration programs when possible. Isabella was the symbolic first beneficiary, and her story became an inspiration for the institution's work. At the official inauguration of the institute, a year after her arrest, while Veronica was behind bars, Michael invited the press, but not to talk about himself. He invited Isabella to give her testimony. The girl, now 15, confidently walked up to the small podium set up in the institute's space. "My name is Isabella Santos," she began, her voice firm. 2 years ago I lived on the streets. I had no family, no hope, no future. But I had eyes to see when someone needed help. And one day, I helped someone. And that someone completely changed my life. She looked at Michael in the audience. Uncle Michael didn't just take me off the streets. He gave me a family, an education, love. But most importantly, he gave me dignity. He showed me that I had value, that my life mattered. And now through this institute, hundreds of children will get the same chance I had. They will know they are seen, that they are important, that they have a future. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Michael felt his chest swell with pride. The girl he had helped was now helping others. The cycle of kindness continued. After the event, reporters surrounded Michael. Mr. Ford, how does it feel to turn your personal tragedy into something positive? He thought for a moment before answering. It wasn't my tragedy that created this. It was the courage of a child who cared enough to warn me about danger. Isabella saved me. This institute is just my way of ensuring that other Isabellas around the world are saved too. Another reporter asked, "Have you forgiven your ex-wife?" Forgiveness is a complicated word, Michael replied. I don't forget what she did. I don't approve or justify it. But I no longer carry anger. She is paying for what she did, and I am living my life. That's as close to forgiveness as I can get. That night, after the inauguration, Michael, Caroline, Isabella, and the Santos family had dinner together. It was a simple celebration at an Italian restaurant they all liked. The conversation flowed, laughter filled the table, and Michael looked around at the group and realized something fundamental. This was his real family, not born of blood, but of choice, of love, of shared experiences. Caroline held his hand under the table and whispered, "You did an amazing thing today." "We did," he corrected. "You helped me get here." Months later, on a quiet Saturday night, Michael and Caroline were at his apartment. She was spending more time there now, had some clothes in his closet, a toothbrush in the bathroom. Small invasions that Michael not only tolerated but appreciated. They were watching a movie when Caroline said suddenly, "I'm thinking of selling my apartment." Michael paused the movie. "Why?" "Because I practically live here now, and keeping 2 apartments is financially idiotic." She turned to him. "But before I do that, I need to know, where do you see this going? Us?" The question was direct, typical of Caroline. Michael appreciated that about her, the honesty without games. "I see this becoming permanent," he answered. "You moving in here or us buying a place together? I see mornings having coffee together, nights like this, intertwined lives." She smiled. "Is that basically asking me to move in?" "It is," Michael laughed. "Sorry it wasn't more romantic. I can do it again with flowers and music if you want." "No need." She kissed him. "I accept it just the way it was. Sincere, real, very you." And so Caroline moved in. They looked for a new apartment, something that would be theirs, without memories of past relationships. They found a spacious loft in Greenwich Village, with large windows and a balcony. They decorated it together, each choice a negotiation, each decision shared. It was different from anything Michael had experienced. With Veronica, there was no imposition disguised as kindness, no control masked as care. It was a true partnership. Isabella helped them with the move, giving her opinion on wall colors and furniture placement. "Are you guys getting married?" she asked casually as they organized books on a shelf. Michael and Caroline looked at each other. "Not yet," Michael replied. "But who knows? Maybe one day." "When you do, I want to be the maid of honor," Isabella declared. "Deal," Caroline agreed, laughing. The Renaissance Institute thrived. In its first year, they helped 43 children. Some were reintegrated with their families, others went to qualified foster homes, all received education and psychological support. Michael visited the institute weekly, knew each child by name, genuinely cared about each story. One day, he met a 10-year-old boy named Raphael. He reminded Michael of himself as a child, before success, when he was just a boy from a simple family with big dreams. Raphael was brilliant at math, solved complex problems in his head, but had no resources to develop his talent. Michael became his mentor just as he had with Isabella. He paid for specialized tutors, materials, everything Raphael needed. And he watched the boy flourish, just as Isabella had flourished. "You're going to end up with a house full of kids," Caroline joked one night. "Would that be so bad?" Michael retorted. She grew serious. "Do you really think about having children? Because after everything you've been through, I thought maybe you wouldn't want to." Michael thought carefully before answering. "Not biological children, I don't think, but children who need a family. Absolutely. There are so many children in the world who need love, a chance. Why not give them that?" Caroline kissed him deeply. "You're a better man than you think you are." "I'm a man who learned from his mistakes," he corrected, "and from his successes. Isabella taught me that family isn't about blood, it's about choice and love." 2 years after meeting Caroline, on a starry night on their loft's balcony, Michael finally proposed. It wasn't elaborate, there was no audience or grand production, just the two of them, a bottle of wine, and the city lights. "Caroline," he began, "I never thought I'd be able to trust anyone again. I thought Veronica had permanently destroyed that part of me, but you showed me I was wrong. You showed me it's possible to love with wisdom, to trust with awareness, to be happy without being naive." He knelt, taking a small box from his pocket. "I have no doubts about you, about us, about our future. So I'm asking you, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to make you as happy as you make me?" Tears were streaming down Caroline's face. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes." The wedding was small and intimate. Isabella was the maid of honor, now 17 and about to enter university to study medicine. Raphael, at 12, was the ring bearer. The Santos family was there, Robert and Helen, a few close work friends of both. No ostentation, no hundreds of guests, just the people who truly mattered. Dr. Paul, the therapist, was among the guests. After the ceremony, he pulled Michael aside. "I'm very proud of you," he said, "of the journey you've taken since that first day in my office." "I couldn't have done it without you," Michael replied sincerely. "You did. I just helped you find the tools that were already inside you, the courage, the resilience, the ability to forgive and move on. All of that came from you." On their honeymoon, Michael and Caroline went to Tuscany, ironically the same place Veronica had once suggested. But it was all different now. It wasn't a fantasy built on lies. It was a real experience shared with someone who truly loved him. Walking through the vineyards, Caroline said, "Do you think she ever thinks about you?" "Who?" "Veronica," Michael reflected. "Maybe. But honestly, I don't think about her much. Sometimes I still have nightmares, memories that surface. But she doesn't control my life anymore. You do. In a good way, I hope. In the best way possible." Back in the States, life continued its rhythm. The Renaissance Institute expanded, opening a second branch. Isabella got into medical school, brilliant and determined. Raphael was in high school, still being mentored by Michael, talking about studying engineering. Michael and Caroline began the formal adoption process for an 8-year-old girl they met at the institute, Luna, shy but sweet. On a Sunday morning, 5 years after meeting Caroline, Michael woke up in the new house they had bought, larger because they now had Luna, and Raphael sometimes stayed with them on weekends. Caroline was sleeping beside him, the sun filtering through the curtains, creating patterns on the wall. From somewhere in the house came the sound of Luna watching cartoons. Michael got up silently and went to the kitchen to make coffee. While waiting for the machine to brew, he looked out the window. The garden they had planted together was blooming. In the corner, the swing they installed for Luna moved gently in the breeze. He thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the pain, the discovery, the rebuilding. He thought about Veronica, probably still in prison, serving her sentence. He felt no anger anymore, just a distant sadness for the waste of it all. She had chosen her path, and now she was living with the consequences. But he had chosen differently. He had chosen to trust again, to love again, to build again. And those choices had brought him here, to this quiet morning, to this family he had created, not from blood, but from love. "Good morning," Caroline said, entering the kitchen in her robe, her hair tousled. "Coffee smells good." "Good morning, love." He passed her a cup. She came closer and hugged him. "What are you thinking?" "About you have that contemplative look. About how lucky we are." "Lucky how?" "Lucky to have found each other. Lucky to have had the courage to try after everything we've been through. Lucky to have this." He gestured to the house, to Luna in the living room, to the life they had built. Caroline kissed him softly. "It wasn't luck, Michael. It was choice. You chose not to let yourself be broken. You chose to grow instead of shrink. You chose love over fear." "We chose," he corrected. "We chose," she agreed. Luna appeared at the kitchen door. "Dad, Mom, can we make pancakes?" Michael's heart still skipped a beat every time she called them that. "Dad and Mom." "Of course we can," he replied. "Come help me." As they prepared breakfast together, laughing when Luna spilled flour, Caroline stealing pieces of banana, Michael felt a deep peace. Not the peace of ignorance he had with Veronica, when he didn't know he was living a lie, but the peace of awareness, of knowing exactly where he was, who he was with, and choosing to be there every day. The phone rang. It was Isabella. "Uncle, I passed my residency exam. I'm going to specialize in pediatrics." The celebration was immediate and loud. Caroline took the phone to congratulate Isabella. Luna asked what pediatrics was. Michael explained it meant being a doctor for children, and Luna said that when she grew up, she wanted to take care of children too. Later, when the house was quiet again, Luna down for her afternoon nap, Michael and Caroline sat on the porch. "Do you have any regrets?" Caroline asked suddenly. "About what?" "Everything. Veronica, the lost time, the pain." Michael thought honestly. "Do I regret being deceived? Yes. Do I regret wasting 7 years? Absolutely. But," and he took her hand, "if all of that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't have met Isabella. I wouldn't have created the Institute. I wouldn't have learned the lessons I learned. And maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't have been ready for you when you came along." "So you're saying it was necessary?" "I'm saying it happened, and I chose to turn something horrible into something meaningful. That's the only real victory over Veronica. She tried to destroy me, but I rebuilt myself stronger." Caroline rested her head on his shoulder. "You're incredible, you know that. I'm a survivor, and I'm grateful. Grateful for the second chance, grateful for you, grateful for all of this." The afternoon melted into evening. The three of them had dinner together, talked about their day, their plans for the week. Luna talked about school, about a new friend. Caroline mentioned an important case at work. Michael shared news from the Institute. It was ordinary, common, every day, and it was perfect. Later, lying in bed, Caroline already asleep beside him, Michael thought about sending a mental message to his past self, that naive man who believed he had everything under control, who didn't see the danger approaching. What would he say? Maybe he would say, "You're going to be betrayed in the worst possible way. It will hurt more than you can imagine. You will question everything about yourself, but you will survive. And more than survive, you will thrive. You will find family where you least expect it. You will find love when you think it's impossible. You will find purpose in the pain." Or maybe he would simply say, "Trust Isabella. The street girl will save you." He closed his eyes, feeling the pleasant weight of exhaustion from a day well lived. Outside, the city continued its frantic pace, but inside there was peace, there was love, there was family, there was a future, and Michael Anderson Ford, at 47, finally understood what it meant to be truly rich. Not in money, though he had plenty, not in possessions, though he lacked for nothing, but in genuine connections, in true love, in meaningful purpose. Veronica had taken a lot from him, but in the end, unintentionally, she had given him something too. She had given him the lesson he needed to learn, that true wealth isn't in safes or bank accounts. It's in the people we choose to love, the lives we touch, the good we do in the world. And with that thought, Michael slept. No nightmares, no fears, no regrets. Just gratitude for the path traveled and hope for the road still to come. Because in the end, after everything, he was no longer the victim of a betrayal. He was the author of his own redemption. And that story, his true story, was just beginning.